All right, here we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm Marianna Everson. I'm candidate for LD19 position 1 for the Washington State House of Representatives. And I'm here with April Obi. She is a member of the community in Aberdeen and an advocate for homeless people. And I'm with Alan Richrod. Familiar face you may have seen in my other videos. Alan is a Aberdeen City Council member again, so that's pretty cool. And we're going to talk about um, homelessness in our community, and we may expand to further out and beyond. April, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing in this journey, maybe just a couple minutes?
Okay, so my name's April Obi,
Oh, sorry.
and I started to become a homeless advocate about 2 years ago. And to be honest with you, 2 years ago, I did not even know there was a homeless camp in Aberdeen, Washington on Ruth Bridge
Yeah,
until a pastor had approached me about it, and I had no clue that it was even there. So then the pastor took me to the homeless camp and gave me a tour, and I was just flabbergasted. There was over 180, 200 homeless people living at the river, and then I found out there was probably about 50 to 80 Native Americans, and about half of them, if not all of them, were families,
right.
and that kind of got the ball rolling. I started helping down and taking donations and food and health supplies and stuff to the river camp. I brought firewood took firewood down there because no one had any source of heat, so I would take firewood so they could have a fire. And
That's kind of
after
one of
they
your side hustles, right?
yes,
Yeah, it's your side hustle.
yep, I sell firewood. That's part of my business. I have my own business, and so I sell firewood. But so then when they got evicted from the river, they were put into the castles, what they call the castle. And mind you, there was up to 180, 200 and some at the river. And when they made the tent city, there was only 125. So there was still 100 and some people that were homeless wandering the streets of Grace Harbor with nowhere to go.
Right. Well, it must not be very comfortable to go to that camp. I mean, I would feel that way. I think if you have had any adverse experiences with the city or police or anything like that, then you're not going to want to camp out right next door to the police station. That's not going to be a comfortable place for you. So I would see where people would choose not to go there. And then there weren't really enough tents, right? I mean, there weren't enough spots, or what do you think?
There were not enough tents, and also the tents, the city did try their best to get, a reliable tent. However, the tents that they got, the condensation was so bad.
Uh,
The tents were meant to be in the mountains
okay.
and not be lived in.
Right,
And
right,
literally, the water dripping in the tents was really bad. They were getting wet, and then they were so close to each other. Where at the river they were not.
right,
Um,
right.
I would laugh because you could be down at the tent city behind City Hall, and you could hear somebody sneeze, and someone would say "bless you" because they
Oh,
were so close.
yeah,
Um, and then the condensation with the tents, it was miserable. I would be bringing blankets all the time because the ones that they had were soaking wet.
right,
And then we would shop, and I would do some laundry and get them some clean ones. Um, and the there were, and to live at the river where there were no rules,
right.
to a
Right.
which was hard.
Right.
So some of them didn't survive. They ended up leaving and were wandering the streets.
Are there sorry, are there other unsanctioned camps that popped up that weren't at the same location? Like,
There were camps that popped up after the river eviction, but then the city was going around and getting them torn down and broke out and getting them kicked out.
I see.
There was one on South Side, and everybody on South Side was, bugging the mayor and there was a council member that lived over on that side and bugging her, and so they got that camp. Um, there's nobody over there. They
They cleared
actually
it up.
tore camps down and kicked people out. So there are people that are just, I have a couple of people that are sleeping in porta potties across the street in my park. You see them splattered around throughout Aberdeen, and now I hate to say this, but Aberdeen is hate happy with the homeless. If somebody sees a tent popped up somewhere, they're on the phone with city council or the mayor, saying, why are you allowing this? And within a couple of days, wherever that tent was, it's tore down.
Right.
So now everybody
Can I get you to hold on just a second?
from, yeah,
Um, I'm getting a message that we're having technical difficulties. So let me ask what that means real quick. I hate for you to, you know, testify, talk about it, and then not have it not come through. So that happened with Alan and I last time. As we had this big conversation and you couldn't hear Alan. So let me find out what's going on. Internet is being weird. That's what the feedback I'm getting. Well, there's probably nothing I can do about the internet being weird at my house. Let me see if everybody left the house pretty much. So we'll just keep going. You keep going with your story. Oh, she's gonna call somebody. I'm gonna mute you really quick.
going to answer
Okay.
the lady that we asked, I believe.
Yeah. You might see in the description, everybody, that there were other people planned on being here, but somehow that didn't happen. So they're not here. Uh,
So, do you want me to go on?
yes, go ahead and go on, honey. We'll just
Okay.
persevere. Get through it.
So now that the tent city, um, they are closing that down June 5th, and so they have been having people kicked out for breaking the rules of the tent city for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
for having heat, for having propane to have heat to cook because they were not allowed to have heat down there. So for one reason or another, people were kicked out, and it's made it to it's gotten so bad that you have all these people that have been kicked out, and you see them sleeping, on the sidewalks, and it's a lot harder to sleep on concrete than it was either at the river. You had something to put under your tent. You had
Right.
pallets put on, or the ground.
Right.
Now they have concrete, so it's making it really hard for anybody to try and find somewhere to actually sleep and not worry about somebody driving by and throwing something on them, which I've seen happen in the last week. There
Mm.
was a guy just laying down on the sidewalk, and somebody drove by and threw some copper or something on him, and it's like it's scary for the homeless. We have mental issues, we have PTSD issues, we have substance abuse, we have alcohol.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because they gave me stacks of their cards and they said, well, you can hand them out to people down here. Well, why do I have to do that? I don't work for your organization. Shouldn't you ask people if they need, some kind of vet? There were vets down there. Find out who's a vet, who needs mental issues, who needs substance and alcohol abuse, instead of doing your little clipboard and looking around and walking out.
Right. Right.
Do your job.
I think you know. Yeah, they did. I did. It feels like it seems like they didn't like dive deep enough into the like sol solutions. Maybe you know what I mean. They went
No.
there. They did. They talked to people. They checked marks. It sounds like they checked the boxes, and maybe it's out of fear or whatever it was out of. Um, it sounds like they didn't dive deep enough into what was going on to make actual.
Did not.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did not. And it's sad because when I started this again, I didn't know, what I was doing.
Right.
And
Learn
as
on
I
the
got
job.
more involved, yeah, on the train job, and so then people were finding out that they wanted to go to treatment. Okay, so they did their stuff that they had to do to get in bed, but then they had no way of getting to that treatment center. And I felt like, these treatments and these organizations or programs and stuff needed to say, okay, we got you a treatment, we got you bed, but okay, here is a bus ticket to get to treatment. No, they don't do that. They have to find their own way.
They couldn't get like
And
a. I'm sorry. We're having sound issues. We couldn't get like a paratransit.
you would think something like that, but
Yeah.
it ended up I took 9 people myself to treatment,
Thank
to
you.
Seattle, to Port Angeles, to Elma, and on my own time, my own dime. And I told everybody that was, at the camp, if you are really serious about going to treatment for substance abuse or drugs, I will take you.
Right.
But it shouldn't be that way. It should be an organization saying, okay, you've done your stuff you needed to do,
Hmm.
and here's a bus ticket,
Right.
for to get there and back. And so it was, again, on the job training, and I've taken people to detox, and it's like, yeah, you
How,
kind of dropped the ball and didn't help the person that really wanted. Just for an example, I had one person that wanted to go to detox, came to me and said, April, I'm doing really bad. I want to go to detox. Okay, babe, let's get you going, and I took him up here on the hill, and they're like, well, he doesn't got any points. He's going through DTs, he's going through withdrawals, he needs detox. Well,
right.
he has to do a phone conference. He's a native person. So I'm on the phone. What do I do? How do I do this?
Right.
Well, you need to get him to hope, have him do an intake over the phone. Okay, do his intake over the phone. Got a bed for you. Came back, said, okay, come back tomorrow. Go back tomorrow, and they said, I, and I don't, I understand this and I don't understand this, but somebody else needed the bed for, more than him. So they told us to come back. So I got him talked into going, and then they said, no, you can't come back. They said, come back tomorrow. So he came back tomorrow, and another, no, we have a pregnant lady that took the bed. Come back in 3 days. By this time, he's not going to want to go.
Yeah,
He's
he's
going
sick by then.
to
Yeah.
be, and it's like, if they want to go in and they want their treatment and they want detox, open the doors now before they have time to think about it and say no.
Right. Right.
And it's frustrating
Mhm.
treatment.
Yeah, that has same for us at the mental health. I think we're gonna have to hold off on this, April, a little bit, because Franklin is telling me that they can't hear you. They can hear me, but they can't hear you. And I'm getting a lot of feedback. It's not your fault. It's something to do with my streaming equipment and the settings or something. It's not your fault. So I don't want to waste your time. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
having you share this story when it's not working. I think I need to, strong arm a freaking tech person that really knows what they're doing, because I obviously am not figuring this out on my own. I think I get everything all set up. I have somebody that helps me set it all up, and then we go to do it and it doesn't work. So I don't know what to do. Earlier when I tested, I just went through one app that's supposed to restream it out to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. I didn't use this other app that's set. So this is fun, huh? One thing captures the picture of what you and I are talking about, and it's supposed to be the sound, and it sends it to another app, and that app sends it out to all the social media. Isn't that silly? We have to have 3 different things going at the same time to make it work. So it allows for a lot of opportunity for things to get screwed up. Okay. Well, could you, April, count to 5 for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So some reason, um, my studio is not picking up your voice. You need to grab your desktop audio. Oh, thanks everybody for being so patient with us. My friend says I need to grab my desktop audio, which he had me delete last time, or somebody had me delete. Hi. Desktop audio. Okay, April, will you count to 5 again?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There you are. Okay, do it one more time.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. That looks like we could have had a winner there. All right. Okay. So, in our story, we had people that, for whatever reasons, they were living at the river. A lot of people with mental health issues, a lot of people with addiction issues, and some people they just can't freaking afford to pay for an apartment, right? I mean, it's just impossible to, make enough money to pay $850 a month for a place to live, right? So
Exactly, because
They
you would have people that are, and they get very little. None of them down there that do have some kind of SSI or disability,
mm-hmm,
they don't get no more than maybe seven, maybe 800. So
right,
you're counting first and last month's rent, deposit, setting up your PUD, water, sewer, and garbage, and food.
right,
So try and do that on $700, and it's impossible. And then again, a lot of them, and people really kind of upset me with this, is like, have animals. Well, get rid of them. I have fur babies. They are my
yeah,
babies. And you tell me to get rid of my baby? No. And some of these animals are, a lot of them are dogs, which
right,
are their protectors.
right, right,
And it was their warmth at night. And some of them have, some kind of health issue, and their dogs are there to help them, anxiety issues.
mm-hmm,
And these animals are their protectors. And they're like, well,
right.
just a lot of places don't take animals, or they'll say get rid of you, or they want an animal fee plus the 800 or some
Yeah,
dollars
or
to
like
get
even
into a
a
place.
fee, and then they up your rent $50 a month to have the pet.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I understand from the other side too, because you don't want somebody's dog to like chew up your doors and poop all over the place. I get it. But that's part of being a landlord. That's why you get the deposit and is because damages happen, things happen.
yeah,
You know. And that's a very personal decision. So that's not something that somebody else should be telling someone to do. Oh, just get rid of your dog.
yeah,
I've had
yeah,
to make that choice before. You know, I've had to make that choice before to let an animal go back to their original owner, and it was super hard, and like I cried for days. But I was not that the dog was not that level of care for me. Does that make sense? Like I was caring for the dog, but
yes.
the dog was a pet, not like my comrade, my buddy, my only thing that I have that loves me. You know, he was my friend, and it was still super hard. And I didn't need him as a service animal or to protect me or that sort of stuff. But it was super hard. It's not something that somebody else
And
should be able to tell someone to do. That's what I'm saying.
when you have people with PTSD, and again, before this COVID-19, the churches that would have, feed the hungry and stuff, and you have somebody that's going through an anxiety attack, and their dog is the one that's able to calm them down. And that dog's been with them for 5, 8, 10 years, and then all of a sudden, to get a place, they have to get rid of a dog. That person's to get a place where he can be out sleeping in the streets and still have his dog.
Right.
And a lot of them down there, in the 2 years that I've been working with the Aberdeen homeless,
Yeah.
a lot of them would rather have their animals eat before them.
I've seen that too.
That's how much that's how much they adore their dogs and their cats.
Hmm. That's what they. That's the thing that people don't maybe make the connection for, that aren't have never been in that situation, is when you are out there on your own. You're all by yourself. I mean, you have buddies, but not. It's not family. It's not your closest person. It's not your mama. You know, and the only entity, the only being that you have a close connection with is your pet. That is another trauma that you would have to endure. You know what I mean? Like you've already been through all of these traumas to get you to the place where you're at now. And now someone wants to ask you to choose another trauma, you know, to get out of it, and you don't know that that's going to be a permanent solution in the first place. Like, you know, so many things have gone wrong. So many times you've been told something's going to work, or you're going to be able to get a place, or, you know, this is going to get better, and then it didn't, or did for a minute, and then it went away. You know, how can you trust that? How about trust? How can you talk to me about how um, how have you been able to find that people can trust you, and how did that come about, if they did?
When I first started at the river, they did not trust me.
Right.
It took a long time for people at the river in the beginning to trust me. Even though I had family that lived down there, what was my game? What did I want from them? What was I going to do to them? It
Right.
took a long time for a lot of them down there to trust me.
Right.
And I didn't want nothing from them. And so when I was going down there taking wood or taking donations and food, you know, it's like, well, what do you want back? What do I have to do for this food? What do I have to do for that blanket? What do I have to do for that dog food that you're going to give me? What's
Right.
the game?
What's the bargain? Yeah.
So it did take
What's the
quite
hustle?
a long time for
Yeah.
people to trust me.
Well, it's hard for people to, any people, but especially people that are struggling with PTSD and that sort of stuff. If you're homeless and you're living on the street or at the river in a tent, you have PTSD. I mean, there's no way that you don't.
Yes.
Right? From
Yeah.
that experience
Yep.
alone, that's happened. So it's hard for people to trust, and it's hard for people, you know, in the street life, you know, you got to do something for somebody, and, you know, it's a barter system. So it's hard for people to believe that anybody would just do something just to do it, just because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And then you look at women that are coming from abusive relationships. And so there was no trust with
Right.
a lot of women that I've met. And that's why they had dogs also, is because those dogs were their protectors, because they have gotten out of an abusive relationship. And so it takes a lot of time for people to trust.
Mhm.
It's because they think that you are going to narc on them, that, you know, they may have warrants, you know,
Right.
or the trust is really hard. It's really hard to gain their trust, or from me
Right.
when I first started.
I'm sure. You know, I'm getting weird feedback again. I'm sure it's hard. I don't blame anybody for that. You know what I mean? That's not something I would ever judge on. Of course, it's hard to trust when you've been hurt so many times. How many times can you, like, get smacked before you just say no more? You know? So can we move into? You mentioned a little bit of June 5th. They're gonna close Tassel with a temporary something in Aberdeen. So
Correct.
that you've heard of, is there any plan for after that? Is there any thoughts? Is there like a wish list for things that we
There
would
is
like to
not.
see happen? There's no plan.
There is not. The plan is they have none. The city has none. The biggest issue that the city had was the county, asking the county and getting the county's cooperation. And I don't know a lot of it about the city, the county, and this and that person, and this department and that department,
Mm-hmm.
except for the money's ran out. There's no more money. They do not have the funds to keep the tent city going behind City Hall. So therefore, it will close June 5th. And a lot of them do not have anywhere to go. and it makes it really super hard now because they started the no sit stand lay ordinance from
Right.
6 a.m. to 11 p.m. They are not allowed downtown.
So what's
And
with the sorry, more feedback. What's with the lawsuit thing? So they can't say people can't camp downtown if they don't have a shelter to go to. That's the ruling from the Ninth Circuit, right? So
yes,
can they enforce the sit stand law when nobody has a shelter? They don't have a shelter.
they kind of worded it where they are allowing them, the homeless,
Mm-hmm.
allowing them to pitch a tent outside of the downtown Aberdeen area, so that parks they can't. They were parked, trying to pitch tents in vacant lots, and so then they started, tearing down the tents in the vacant lots. So it's a 3-block area from downtown and 9 blocks from the bridge all the way to the AM/PM is where the no sit lay ordinance is. Outside of that, they can make pitch a tent. But then you get the neighbors that saying, I don't want that tent there. And then in a couple of days, that tent's taken down. And then they said that because there is a women's shelter and a men's shelter, they could go there.
They're not adequate. There's not enough beds at those places, and there's issues with those places, right? For people that have
Correct.
PTSD.
Yep.
Members
And
of
I
the
call it,
LGBTQ community are not
yes,
exactly welcome in those two places. Although the women's shelter, they helped me when I was homeless, but I'm not a member of the LGBTQ or community, and
and there are gay people that are homeless and are transgender,
yeah,
and so transgenders are not welcomed at the men's shelter. A few months ago, a transgender was turned away. Women can go to the women's shelter if they're not 86th from there for whatever reason. And so you have 2 places in Grace Harbor, and they're, really hard. Everybody's like, well, there's so many beds at the women's shelter, but they are run by whoever from that organization. They make the rules. And if somebody's 86th for life, then where's that person going to go?
right.
And if you're gay,
Well, and
they're,
it's not, and it's
and
also unless they've changed anything, the women's shelter is not accessible by someone in a wheelchair or who uses a walker or has any mobility issues, because the dorm is downstairs and you have to walk down the stairs. There's no elevator or ramp or anything. And then the shower is upstairs, so it's like 3 floors.
correct.
So if you
Yep.
have any kind of mobility issues, you can't stay there.
Yeah. And if you have an animal,
Right. Or a son
they won't take you.
who's over 10 years old can't be there.
Over 10 years old. Yep.
That's just awful. Because it's the women's and
So
children's
it's
shelter.
very hard to live in Grace Harbor. It's very hard as a homeless person to survive.
Yeah.
And my problem that I'm going to have now is where they were all in one area. I could take clothes and food and donations and hygiene packets, but now they're all spread out, and there's a lot of hiding spots where people are hiding in and you don't know they're there because there's so much brush.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where a lot of them are to get them the blankets and the clothes and the hygiene packets and stuff to them, where they were all in one area where I was able to get to them at the river or at this tent city. Now they're spread out, and you I don't know if you've noticed, there's a lot of them walking around
Yeah.
with their belongings. There's a lot of them hiding in alleyways, because the alleyways are a safe zone that's not involved with the sit, stand, or lay ordinance. So there's a lot of them that are going to be hiding in alleyways. But when this COVID-19's over, that's not going to be making the business owners pretty happy with them hanging out in the alleyways.
So if we could have a wish list, if we could say what we think, or we've heard from our homeless friends, what they think they need, what do you think like the top two things are? Like an affordable place to live, right? Free or affordable,
Yes.
right? And services that help them work on their mental health and addiction process, right? If they
Yes.
choose, like you get first, for
Yes.
me, first you get number one. You get a place, right? That's number one. You get a
Yep.
place. It's not like you have to do number two so you can have number one. No, you get a place,
Yeah.
and then you can work on number two, your addiction and your mental health stuff. And then
Yes.
what do you think number three would be? Since Fog's not here to tell us.
I believe that the county kind of dropped the ball, and the county needs to step up and help with funding and a low barrier shelter. This is, starting summer. We have harsh winters down here, and we need a shelter for men and women.
Right.
And that's part of the problem with the shelters that we have. You have couples that are homeless, and they either got to go to the men's shelter or the women's shelter. They can't be in the same place at the same time.
Right.
And then you'll have a couples that have animals, and again, they don't want to get rid of their animals so that they can, stay here or there. We need a place
which
where
is a temporary fix anyway, right? Like, oh, I get to stay there for 3 weeks, but I got rid of my child so that I could stay there, my fur child, right? No, that's just not a solution.
So getting the county, and I wish the one other person was here. I had not, all I heard was the county did not want to help, and they probably would have been able to extend this tent city behind City Hall if the county was willing to help. But then you also have the backlash of what I call the haters, where they did not want that tent city behind City Hall, and they were happy that the county didn't want to step up and help. So we need more organizations, and the city and the county work together on trying to solve and trying to brainstorm on what to do for the homeless. I know it's not just an Aberdeen thing.
Yeah.
I've been in Seattle, and I've been in Olympia. I help feed the hungry in Olympia on Thursdays, and down here, Feed the Hungry is 80 people, 90 people. When I help with Feed the Hungry in Olympia, we're talking 200-300 people we're feeding in Olympia.
Yeah.
So I know it's everywhere, but we live here.
They're building a shelter there in Olympia. Olympia is building a beautiful, like 120 bed, low barrier shelter with 120 bed transitional housing. I mean, it's crazy. They're building a beautiful place
Yeah.
for people to heal and get better, and we can do that. We can do that.
And I've had people that were homeless say, if we could just shower and have clean clothes, we would feel better about ourselves,
Right.
and we would want to go out there and try and find jobs. But to try and go get a job when you don't smell that good and you don't look all that good and you haven't been able to shave, a man being able to
Mm-hmm.
shave, it's hard.
Right.
And
Right.
um that's what people want. They want the clean shaved, well dressed person when they come to an interview. And
Sure.
the homeless can't do that.
Exactly. You're too poor to get a job.
Yep.
Yeah. So we, kind of as a society, like just as a whole, as our whole country, this isn't the only place that this is going on. Um, we totally. I've seen so many people just dismiss this problem, right? And I think it's kind of out of fear of becoming homeless themselves. Like who you call the haters, they're so. It seems to me, and I'm not, I haven't talked to everyone, but I've talked to a lot. Um, it's kind of like they're afraid that they'll be homeless, and at least if that person's homeless, I'm a little bit better than them, and I'm doing okay. It's like they get their sense of self or their self-esteem from being just a little bit better than somebody else. That's really sad to me, to see people doing that. But it's kind of human nature. A lot of people do that. Um, I'd like to see us find a way to talk to our haters and, you know, just like connect to their humanity, Like, I'm not saying, I'm not putting that on you to do that, honey, but, but as a community, like, we are all in this together, right? There is no separation. We all live in this county. We live in Aberdeen or Hoquiam or Montesano or Helena. All those places have people that are living rough out on the street or in the woods or whatever. So all of us need to come up with the actual solution that we can all live with, because we're not going to throw them in the river. We're not going to throw them away. They're not going to disappear one day. Poof, they're gone. You know, but we can come together and find a way. So I think we need to learn from like cities like Olympia. They created a new fund, that's building them that nice big new shelter. I think maybe people in Aberdeen, might be like, okay, send them to Olympia. That's not right. Um, so, who do you think we um, need to appeal to do those sorts of things? Like building Olympia built that fund. Well, that was the state legislature had a part in that, and then there was a citizens initiative in the city of Olympia that did some of that, and then there were some organizations that are willing to like be advocates like and like run the place and do the administrating, the paperwork and the pay the people to work there and that sort of stuff. And then there's a community that's willing to pay that little bit. It's like a few cents tax or something, but all together it comes into a big $1.5 million or something. So for me, that takes a lot of organizing, right? That's what I'm thinking is we need to organize and um, having the people that are affected by the problem be leaders is what I think. What do you think? Like people who live at the river, who used to live at the river, or people who did live at Tassel, or you know, people are still out there right now.
I agree. Like a round table with, with the county,
Mm-hmm.
with city with city attorney, with coastal community action, with the men's shelter, the women's shelter, some of the churches get together in a round table and say, hey,
Yeah.
what can we do? Where do we start? You've been at the tassel.
Yeah.
I would like people to just realize that these homeless people are people. They have this image of, that all homeless people are bad and they're druggies and they're alkies and they're going to beat the crap out of you and they're mean. You've been at the tassel. You've seen them and how they've act and
Yeah.
how defeated they are.
Mhm.
And in the 2 years that I've started this, I've learned everybody has a story of why they are there.
Yeah.
And I've gone to
Yeah.
council meetings here in Aberdeen, and I've done that. And I've said, at any moment, you could lose your job and be down at the river with them when the river was open.
Yeah.
And especially now with this COVID-19, everybody's hours have been cut. Places have been closed, may not reopen. So we're struggling to pay mortgage. We're struggling to pay rent. So at any time, we could lose everything. I've lost everything. I've been homeless. And, we could lose. And I had, a nice house in Seattle, and I lost everything. And that's a lot of people that are doing that now. They've lost everything and they're homeless, and they just need a helping hand instead of having backs turned on them.
Right. Because I think that's where it becomes harder on people is like when you first be. Can you hear that? When you first become homeless, um, it sucks. It's like the worst thing, right? But as it goes on over time, like now it's been a month and 2 months and 3 months and a year, and it sucks even worse. Like the farther it goes, like the things get harder, right? It's harder to trust people. If you have an addiction problem, that gets worse. If you know what I mean, or you start one. I've talked to people who weren't addicts before they were homeless, but they started doing meth so they could stay awake, so somebody wouldn't steal their shit. Like literally weren't already addicted to something. So
Or they get drunk so they can stay warm at night when it's 20 below zero during winter.
right. So don't feel it. That's one of the things I talk about in my campaign, is that it's sometimes it's like anything you have to do to not feel, because everything's so bad. You don't want to feel any of that stuff. So we all have our own coping mechanisms for avoiding that stuff that we don't want to think about. Mine is food. Some people it's shopping, some people it's gambling, some people it's running or exercising too much. Everybody in America has something. Going to church 16 days a week, whatever it is, or 6 days a week. Everybody has their coping mechanisms, and just because somebody else is illegal and yours is legal doesn't make you a better person than them, right? It doesn't make you a better person than
Right.
them. All right, so
Exactly.
we got Alan in here, and we've been ignoring him like the whole time because we're two ladies, and that's what we do. Alan, you're new on this again. Return to the city council, and we want to hear what you think the city can, as you learn more and more. What kind of solutions do you think we could come up with in our community?
Well, I think there's quite a few that I'm kind of still waiting for any of them to be tried. I've been to a few of the housing coalition meetings, which happened in downtown Aberdeen, and I think April's probably been there too. And one of the things that I used to get in trouble for when I was on council before was that the whole point of it's a mandated thing that they have to come up with a 10-year homeless plan, and the point of the 10-year homeless plan was to come up with a way of building the next 10-year homeless plan. And none of it really
It was
seemed
like
to
a hamster
solve
wheel.
anything. Well, and it the way it's structured, it kind of feeds on itself that way. I mean, you have to get any kind of federal or state money, you have to fill out these plans and do all that, and that's okay. But still, we've got, from my point of view, we've got, or as a famous candidate would say, in my view, the we've got several organizations, formal and otherwise, who are dealing with the homeless community, let's call it, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And we've got state government, and we've got county government. And state government's just an hour away, and we've got city government and various and sundry things in the middle. And these groups all seem to be siloed and not talking with each other. And that nobody's getting anything done because nobody talks to anybody. And I had advocated, why don't we get these groups together, literally around a table, and take the problem apart. And this is part of what I used to do when I worked with ISO certification, which is essentially what you do is it's a manufacturing thing for manufacturing processes, but it applies to anything. And you literally take your entire operation apart and see what you're doing, what it is that you want to accomplish. And okay, if this is what you're doing and this is what you want and it's not working, why is that? And so it can be done with processes as well. And so we can do that. One of the things I think we have to figure out is exactly how many groups are we dealing with? Because homeless. I mean, that's a catch-all term that we use for anybody, anywhere from people who simply don't have a place to live to people who live on the streets because of drug addiction or what have you, and in some cases just people we don't like. We sometimes go, oh, that's a homeless guy. But everybody, like April says, everybody's got their own story. And some of this can be solved to some extent with the village idea. It doesn't have. It could be individual buildings, individual houses in like a park type thing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something like the one in Seattle, the Ernestine Anderson House, and on Jackson Street in Seattle. It's Jimi Hendrix's old neighborhood, and we went up there. Tim Quigg and a bunch of us went up there and toured the place, and it's really kind of neat. There are studio apartments. They're a little bigger than a studio apartment, but it's an apartment building. And on the first floor, there's a gathering center, and there's pool tables, and there's a kitchen, and down the hall there's laundry facilities and there's shower facilities. In fact, most of the rooms, the larger rooms, have their own bathrooms. I think, now that I think about it, I think all of them do. But there's a staff person on site all the time, and they're not concerned so much with why you're homeless, but the only requirement is that you pay 1/3 of your income as rent, and you make, I don't know, say you make $500 a month, you pay 1/3 of that for your apartment. Mm-hmm. And which isn't very much, and if somebody's making $3,000 a month, well, you wouldn't be homeless, particularly if you were making $3,000 a month, although in Seattle you might be.
Yeah.
But then you'd only pay $1,000 a month, or you understand how that third works. Right. And so that the rest of it is subsidized, and of course it's subsidized, but look at the subsidy. As far as subsidies goes, look at the subsidy that the state gave the Boeing aircraft company, and
or Weyerhaeuser,
under pressure, give us this money or we're going to leave town. So they give them the money and they leave town. That's not likely to happen, from a pure Keynesian economic standpoint. Subsidizing people with a place to live where they can feel safe and where they can shower when they want to, where they can have nice clothes and they can wash their clothes and all that kind of stuff and live a normal life. Those people are likely to get jobs and contribute to the economy and pump money back into the economy.
This is true.
From my point of view,
Just from
from an economic
standpoint.
point of view, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of there really is no, I'll call it a task force to coordinate. Even, you know, say the county leads it off, and then there's all these other groups get together, and you put these people in a room and lock the doors and slip food under the table or under the door if you have to. But make them do it, and come up with you identify as close as you can the actual community you're working with. You would find out what the actual problems are. Well, they're all druggies, they're all drunks, and oh well, no, they're not. Some of them are homeless because they don't have a place to live, and then you
Who
well,
are
yeah,
we to
and
judge somebody else's struggle? We are not.
yeah, and there's going to be problems. There's going to be people taking advantage of the system. Okay, but I would rather have people who are living on meager income maybe taking advantage of a system, you know, a few $100s a month or something, compared to giving $90 billion a year to the petroleum industry. Tell me that's not taking advantage of the system, and then they don't pay their way anyway. They, you know,
Right.
so putting public money into the public makes a lot more sense than putting public money into private corporations, and that gets a little far afield. But we could build, say, we could build it would be very simple to build a village of. In fact, when I was on council the first time, somebody who worked at Home Depot called me about this and said, "Why don't we build separate little houses in a park, and with a common area, and there's a common area between the two big buildings there in Seattle, Ernestine Anderson House, and the one next to it, I can't remember the name of that singer. But the people that lived there took over the little common area outside, and they put in a vegetable garden, and now they grow their own food.
Guerrilla
Why couldn't you do that here?"
Yeah,
And
sure.
this guy
So
said,
the city
part of
a couple years ago when I was at a council meeting, they voted and passed. Oh, April left or dropped out. The city passed a whatever they're calling them ordinance to be able to have a RV parks within the city limits. So couldn't an RV park be a transitional housing? You know, people could
be
fix up RVs or bring in the tiny houses or whatever on wheels, and then they could be able to use that because then it would have water and laundry and showers and, you know, I'm gonna rename you April.
Yeah.
You're back.
You could, but there again, the city passes an ordinance. Okay, now we're going to allow the construction of tiny house villages. Okay, that previously may have been illegal. I don't know, but let's say we're going to do that. Okay, then they shove the ball off the table and don't know where it goes, and we're kind of left where we started. Here we can do this, but nobody's doing it, and this fellow that was talking to me suggested, why not, as part of the rent, you work to keep the place clean and mowed and the sidewalk swept and all that kind of stuff, and the maintenance and everything. And that, you know, that's part of what you want to, just like a homeowner, you know, you can't let your grass grow too high and all that kind of stuff. They can come and
I
make
noticed
at
the city hall camp at Tassel that people were just volunteering to do that. You know, you give people, empower people, and you give them the opportunity, they're gonna do stuff that needs to be done. You know, and help them help them learn to organize themselves. You know, or let them know that it's okay to organize themselves, have a, you know, community meeting, make some decisions together, you know. People are good. I mean, under it
Yeah.
all, no matter what their issues were that got them there, people are inherently good. I've found, and you know,
And
it's usually a
that's right.
misunderstanding.
That's right. And people tend to gravitate towards that. Even on April probably saw this when she talked to people on a riverfront, that there was always somebody who was kind of a de facto leader, someone who could organize the people in a particular situation when they needed it. And I know from before on council, there were people down there that the police would talk to because they knew they could get straight information and that kind of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, the
Oh,
the
you're
idea that we
muted.
could
Just a second.
form this task force.
I got you.
I'm muted. Okay.
No, I was April.
There was I think it was in the paper, and I'm trying to remember when. It was late last year that the county had talked about. In fact, it was Randy Ross had mentioned forming the very task force that I'd been talking about for 2 years, and I haven't heard anything since. So from a city point of view, that would be my direct question to the county commission: is what happened to that? And
Right.
in addition, you guys were sitting on $3 something million designated to help solve this problem. And as one former commissioner told me, it's just sitting there because nobody's asking for it. And why not? Why aren't we using that?
Well, the
Or
thing,
make plans to use it?
something I'm gonna do when I get elected is just acknowledge that there are agencies that do this work, that are doing the work, right? But there are
Mm-hmm.
entities and agencies and things that are happening just to keep them doing the work. Like they only do enough work to need more work. Does that make sense? It's like a hamster wheel.
Oh no, that's
Just so
that's human.
you
Yeah, yeah.
you could solve the problem, but if you did, then you wouldn't have a job. So they don't solve the problem. They just keep
Well,
doing the minimum amount that needs to be done, so that
mm,
they feel good, but so they don't have to
yeah,
lose their funding for their program. So
yeah.
Well,
I
that's what
Well,
say,
and
they did at the tent city.
what's
mm,
that?
That's what they did at Tent City. Whoever those organizations, the two ladies that came down, they did very little. They walked through Tent City, they checked off their little clipboard, and they left. And that was their job. And that, for whatever they had to do to keep their money coming in for their organization, they did their little part at the Tent City. They walked through and walked out and left.
Right,
They
right.
made no
So
contact with nobody,
their
but they
yeah,
vision
uh,
their vision for their agency should be to never be needed again. Right? That should be like
yeah.
the mission of a homeless or a mental health,
oh yeah,
or
yeah,
is to
yeah.
let's cure
But that's
everybody and then we're not needed anymore, right? But
yeah.
nobody wants to do
Well,
that because they
and I
want to keep
don't
their
fully
business
buy
going.
that. That okay, we have a government employee. They would be county people, essentially, and other people. And okay, we'll solve homelessness, and then we'll be out of a job. I don't see that as an end result, because if you're solving that problem, that's not the only problem there is, and you can't just solve one problem. Maybe you can apply your skills to other problems. I mean, I can't see
Yeah. Well,
as
yeah,
as
like
a
government, like the
uh,
county health department, their mission should be to end homelessness. They say that, but it should be really to end. What I'm talking about is agencies that are funded by the county health department or the state or whatever. Those other outside agencies or private
mhm.
nonprofits or whatever, they're that would be difficult for them to make the choice to have their mission be to end homelessness, because then they would get
Oh,
themselves out of a job. The government agency, they definitely need to be working as a way to end homelessness, because they're still going
oh,
to be an
indeed,
agency.
indeed.
They're still going to be part of the city or the county or the state. So they
Yeah.
wouldn't be out of a job. But
Well,
somebody that's a private
my
or
job.
nonprofit that
If my job at the county, at a county office, at a county organization, if my job was specified as ending homelessness, I wouldn't have to worry because it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Homelessness has been a problem, since capitalism reared its ugly head, and we can get into that debate. But it's as you know, it's a worldwide problem, and City of Aberdeen's not going to solve it. No city's going to solve it, but we can do what we can do. And as far as I'm concerned, we're not even sure what we can do yet because we aren't even looking at it.
Right.
We're coming up with these band-aids and putting adhesive tape on the band-aids because they start to peel a little bit. Well, let's you stop trying to patch the holes in the house or something. Let's maybe build another house or find another solution to this. And we're not going to do it with disparate groups that don't talk to each other. Let's get the people that can actually do something about this. And Chaplains on the Harbor, and I don't know if Revival's even still going anymore, but all the people that did that stuff are still around.
Mm-hmm.
And both of you guys have done quite a bit and are into it. And there's people who don't have any idea what to do with the homeless community and are no part of it and don't want any part of it, but they're good planners and could come up with ways to secure funding and all this other stuff. So there's things we could do for this in a coordinated fashion, and there doesn't seem to be any coordination. I wish I was wrong, but it's the city says we can't do it without county help. County says, well, screw you, we're not going to help you, which is against what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. And then the fight starts and nothing gets done. Meanwhile, people they don't even fall through the cracks anymore. The cracks are full. They're just spilling out onto the street. And so there's there's a battle between homelessness and public safety and all of this kind of stuff, and we got to deal with that. But that's my main bugaboo, is that we don't seem to be doing anything. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, and it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take dedication, and that probably scares too many people off. But sorry about that. That's what you got to do.
Right.
And it will get worse June 5th when they evict the tent city.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to probably make a noise about that because you don't want people wandering. You don't want homeless people wandering the street. So you create a place where they stay, and now you close it down, but you don't want them wandering the street. But you're not going to create a place you see what I'm dealing with here. It's a kind of a fatal loop.
Hamster wheel.
Well, yeah, and it's a hamster wheel. Yeah, and it's just again, you're not thinking about this. We don't want the homeless camp to be behind City Hall. Okay, we'll close it. Problem solved. Wait, it's a philosophical thing, I guess. I mean, it comes from my idea that in my mind, you can't really throw anything away because there's no such thing as away. You just move it out of sight.
Right.
You put it in the trash, and the guy comes in the truck and picks it up, and it goes somewhere. You don't know where, but you don't care because it's not here.
Right.
And but it is a true measure of society.
What scares me is with the COVID-19, you have these people that are going to be that are panhandling. You have all these tourists this past weekend. Okay, you're having money handed from one person to another person to another person. Mm-hmm. So how are we going to know if anybody that was homeless or is homeless that has, COVID-19? And we don't know. Nobody in the tent city was tested. But you think about it, you have all these other organizations that made meals, to-go lunches. Okay, so you have all these people that are making to-go lunches, and it's handed from one person to another person to another person.
Oh, yeah.
So when they close the tassel June 5th, and you have all these people out here, summertime, panhandling, money from hand to hand to hand to hand.
And they can't wash their hands. There's nowhere to wash their hands, let alone take a shower or, put on clean clothes. They can't even wash their hands.
But in the case of the City of Aberdeen, first thing we can do is, regarding the homeless situation, figure out exactly what we can do. Whiteboard the whole thing. We've done this. I've done this with software development. I've done it with manufacturing procedures. I've done it with other kinds of things. And figure out exactly what you want to do. Figure out what the problem is. Take the problem apart. Lay it out on the table. Figure out how you're going to solve what you can solve. We don't have enough money to have somebody come in and build a tiny house village. Well, okay, how about the Grace Harbor College Carpentry Department? They've got some expert carpenters up there. Building those houses would be perfect.
Yeah.
And I've already talked to them about it. Well, we don't know how to run it. Well, there's people who do. You talk to people in Olympia. You could talk to the low income housing institute in Seattle, and
Yeah.
Sharon Lee is her name. She's more than happy to. She's even offered to come down here and help run it. And Catholic Community Services has even offered to help to run the thing. And the city doesn't have
The
to run.
Seattle Indian Health Board put up 15 tiny homes, and we could have had the containers. Tim Quigg had bought 15
Yeah.
containers a couple years ago, and he was willing to give them to the city for free, and the city back then turned it down. So that's
Yeah, they did.
15 containers. I don't know what they call them, but they were tiny home containers.
Yeah.
They were
Mr. Quigg
shipping
bought
containers.
15 of them, said, "Here, they are yours. Do what you
Yeah.
want with them." And the city didn't want them.
Yeah, I know. I saw a couple of them up there. Had ended up. I can't remember exactly where it was. It was a place in South Seattle that was essentially a tiny house village, and two of them ended up there. And the people were really nice, and this lady was all excited about getting a new job, and they had a big double trailer there that had it was like two trailers side by side, and one side was bathing and the other side was laundry. And it was kind of funky, but it worked, and it was set up so people didn't have to live in the mud, and didn't have to have. I didn't know that thing about the tent, the condensation in the tents that you were talking about, and that's a perfect example of the city hauling off and, oh, we're going to buy all these tents,
They Googled
leaving
it.
it to a purchasing agent who didn't know what kind of tents they needed. And anybody who does any sort of camping knows that, you camp in the wet, you need a different kind of a tent than you do in the desert. So,
Right.
And a lot of it was, to not interrupt you, but it's just like, well, if they didn't have all this trash and all this stuff in there. We had a person that was there that thankfully is out of the tassel thing. He's up in Tacoma, got a job and whatnot. The cleanest person there in a tent, and he still had condensation bad.
It had nothing to do
Where
with
the floor had 2 inches of water because of the condensation.
oh geez.
crazy.
Yeah, well, that's bad
And
planning.
I personally would like, the people that are running for office for whatever they're running for, to stop making broken promises. Walk your walk. Don't just say something to get the votes. Mean it.
That's right.
Yeah,
Because these are people and people's lives.
That's right.
So don't blow smoke up somebody's butt just to get a vote. Walk your walk.
That's right. I agree.
yeah, there's something to that. There is, or indeed. Yeah.
I'll win or lose, I'm still gonna be here doing the stuff, doing all the work.
You're gonna still be a thorn in our side.
Yes, I will. Okay, well, it's 8:20 now, so I'm gonna go ahead and have us wrap this up, and we can get on with the rest of our evening.
Okay.
I really appreciate you both being here with me, and April, I really appreciate you reaching out to me to set this up. That's kind of like the last, this running for office stuff is really weird, but what I need to say at the end, what I want to say to you guys is that anytime, if you want to set up one of these meetings with me, I am available to you. You have to just email me at info@mariannaforthepeople.com, and we'll set up one of these live streams with you. on your time when you're available and I'm available. You can bring whoever you want into the meeting, and we can do it a live stream or we can do it privately. Either way, whatever way is best for you. And you can volunteer if you go on my website at mariannaforthepeople.com, and there's a volunteer tab, and you can what we're doing right now is getting set up and getting going is people are writing postcards. So we purchased these postcards. I don't have one sitting here. And then on the back you just write your personal message of why you think people should vote for me, and then you send it back to us and we put the stamps on and send them out. So that's going to be fun. And pretty soon we're going to have phone banking. So if you want to volunteer to do phone banking, you can do that on there. I'm really serious in that, I want to solve problems. I want to make a difference in people's lives. I don't want to just keep perpetuating the same damn problems over and over again so that people can, get paid. That's ridiculous. We need to take care of our people, and our people take care of us, and that's what the world is about. So, thank you for coming and watching us. Thank you, April and Alan, for being here. You're my good friends, and I appreciate you so much.
Sorry the
It's our
others
pleasure.
didn't join.
That's okay. Maybe we'll see him at another time. We got a few months of meetings
Yes.
to fill, so it'll be perfect.
Yes.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right.
Okay,
Good night.
we'll see you.